Hi, my name is Todd Grimes, and in this program we're going to go through the techniques of organic modeling in Lightwave, starting with the head. Through the course of this series we're going to create an entire character as well as set him up and animate him. We're going to start from the beginning with an idea and bring it through all the way to a finished production. Whether you're an industry professional or a hobbyist, you'll find that the most effective way to complete a production is to follow the age-old traditions of the production pipeline. It starts with a story, an idea. And once the story is completely fleshed out, the characters begin to take form in concept art. Concept art is drawings or paintings which demonstrate the designs that were created within the story. We're going to use this model sheet as a reference to bring these 2D design into 3D space. We're going to start with the head. So let's get started. Let's start with setting up our directory structure and setting the content directory in Lightwave so all of our files will be loading and saving in the proper places. To set up the content directory in Lightwave, we want to access the General Options panel. If you go to the Modeler drop-down in the upper left corner, in the Options panel, General Options, the hotkey, which is O, right here where it says Content Directory, we want to direct that to our particular directory structure so that all the files will be going to the places that we want them to be saved, as well as loading and saving images and things like that. So I'm just going to click on this button here and direct it to where I've got the directory structure set up. If you load this content directory off the DVD and load it to your local disk, you can see that there's a character animation folder, and within that folder there's a content folder. So I click to that and say OK, and now it's basically going to look for all of our files and images and scenes and things like that within this content directory. So now it's set up. And what I'm going to start with is taking a look at our concept art. Since we're starting with the head, I'm going to look specifically in that region. Now this character, he is obviously a very stylized design, and he's sort of a cartoon character. And in his character bio, he's sort of a ham actor, so he's kind of a goofy guy, so to speak. So he's got a giant jaw, little nose, your basic ridiculous superhero proportions. So what I'm going to do is just analyze the general form here, and I'm going to start with a box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come under the Create tab, go to the Box tool, which is capital X is the hotkey, Shift X, and I'm going to create the initial box. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the numeric panel because I want to keep it to relative scale, realistic, real-world scale here. So I'm going to start with, say, a width of maybe 8 inches or so. He's kind of a big guy. And again, this is just the cranial section of his head, so maybe a height of, let's say, 7 inches, and a depth of, let's say, 8 inches as well. And then I'm going to put all the center values at 0. So the box is essentially centered. And what I'm going to do is I want to begin with a box that has a couple of segments. So I'm going to give it 2 segments on the x-axis. And you can see what that did, put a division right down the center there. And then 2 on the z. So I've got a section, cross-section in the side view as well. So I'll close the numeric panel, hit the space bar, and I've got this perfect box here. So what I'm going to do is, again, this is just the cranial section of his head. So I want to extrude out the jaw region. And since this character has sort of a very definitive, prominent jaw, I'm going to go ahead and select these 2 bottom polygons in the front section of the bottom of the head. And what I want to do is I want to extrude those out together. So I'm going to use the Smooth Shift tool. So if I go to Multiply here, find the Smooth Shift, which is the hotkey is Shift F or capital F. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click once. And now it looks like nothing happened, but what I did is I just extruded and created new geometry all along the edges of these polygons. But since I didn't extrude it at all, just right-clicked once and activated the tool, it appears as though nothing happened. So the next thing I want to do is take those polygons and move them down. So I'm going to go to Modify and select the Move tool, which is T on the keyboard. And I'm just going to bring those right down like that. So basically what I'm left with is this sort of L shape. Okay. And with that, you can see that this would represent the cranium and this the jaw. And right now, it's very blocky, so what I want to do is start shaping it into the very general form of a rounded head. So what I want to do is, I've got this object perfectly centered, so I want to be able to edit one side of the face and have the same actions occur on the other side, so I can create the whole head at one time without having to do one side and then mirroring it, that sort of thing. With the Symmetry tool activated, I'll be able to edit one side of the head and have the same operations mirrored on the opposite side. So whatever points I drag on one side, the same effect will happen on the opposite side. I can do the whole head at one time, but really I'm only working on one half. So, to activate the Symmetry tool, I'm going to just click on the button down here in the lower section of the interface. The hotkey for that is capital Y, or Shift Y. And you'll probably find through the course of creating the head, most of the time we'll leave it on, but occasionally we'll turn it off and back on and things like that. So what I'm going to do is, with Symmetry on, I'm going to use the Drag tool. Under Modify, it's Control T is the hotkey. So I select the Drag tool and put it right over one of the points here in the top view. And you can see as I'm dragging it around, the same operation is happening on the opposite point. It's basically mirrored. Now what I'm noticing right off the bat is that I have the grid snap on, which is on by default in the Lightwave modeler. It's a great tool, but when you're using organic modeling, it can be restrictive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. So let's go to the modeler drop down here, over to Options, and select the Display options. If I come over to Units, that's where it's got all of my metric, English units and things like that. Right down here in the middle, there's a grid snap button. Currently it's on standard. I'm going to select that to None. Now when I come back and drag that point around, see I have a much smoother transition there. And I don't have to worry about the points adhering to any grid position. And again, I'm going to do it to the back here, just kind of rounding out the shape, make it less boxy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing in the front view here. Just going to pull some of these up. And I'm just using the Drag tool, kind of manipulating the points around. The jaw, I'm going to be a little less rounded because I want the jaw to be sort of heroic and firm. And if you look in the side view, do the same thing here. And just kind of rounding out the shape. This is very general, very basic shape so far. It's as if we're sculpting this and chiseling away at it. We're starting with a very general shape, and then we're going to add in the details as we go along. Now this particular character has a very interesting cranium to jaw ratio. His head's very small and his jaw is very large. So what I'm going to do is kind of drag the points down a little bit more even, and get more of that sense of the character having this giant jaw here, a goofy superhero jaw. And we'll continue to tweak that as we go and as we continue to create the model. And one thing that I often find useful in organic modeling is being able to edit in the perspective window here. In addition to editing in these views, I can also put the drag tool right over the intersection of the polygons and edit right there in the perspective window. This enables me to see how the model is shaping up in different views, as well as the use of perspective. All of these views are orthographic, which means that there's no perspective change. For instance, I can use this for the back of the head to sort of round that out. And I have this very basic shape. And what I'm going to do here is toggle this object, which is currently a polygon model, into a subdivisional surface object, which is subpatch mode in Lightwave. I'm going to hit the Tab key, and then I can see how the object would look if it were subdivided. So right now you see what we're getting so far, the very general shape of that character's head. And this would be a good point to save the model. So I'm going to come over to the File drop-down and scroll down to Save Object As. And since we set up our content directory initially, we're taken right to our Objects folder. Since we're building a character, I'm going to go ahead and put them in the Actors folder. There's a folder in there called Owlman. That's the character we're making here. So I'm going to go ahead and put him in the Work directory, since this is a work in progress. And there's some files in there already that were supplied. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to name this simply Head01. What I'm also going to do at this stage is I'm just going to copy this geometry down here in the bottom. Hotkey is C. And I've pasted it in the next available layer. I like to do this pretty frequently, just in case for any reason I want to go back to a previous version. Of course, as long as you're consistent with your saving, you can always load your previous version. But it's nice to be able to just go back to your previous layers and have what you've previously done. And it also, you might get to a point where you can turn these heads into another character. And if you have a version of it with less detail, you can always go back to it right there in your previous layers. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to edit this object and create more detail. So what I want to do is have a couple more divisions in the side here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the knife tool to cut through a couple of the sections of the head here. So I'm going to go to the Construct tab and find the knife tool here. The hotkey for the knife is capital K or Shift K. And what I'm going to do with the knife tool is I'm going to cut straight through the center of the skull section here. So what I want to do is I'm going to right-click and drag in the side view here. And that creates a division straight through the center of the cranium part. Now what I want to do is create another division pretty much along that same line straight through the middle of the jaw here. And I'm going to right-click right down here. It'll just bring the activated cut tool straight down to where I put the mouse here. So what I'm going to do is hit spacebar, deactivate the tool. And now you can see I've got two divisions straight through the object there. And the next step, pretty much any time I add any geometry or any detail, the next step is to continue to massage the points. So specifically in the side view here, I'm going to keep up the form by continuing to drag the points around a little bit here. Very subtle sometimes, but just so it doesn't get carried away when you're adding a lot of detail, it's easier to keep the form relative so that you don't end up with a lot of points to move around. Okay. And again, I want one more cut straight down this section, right across the middle. So I'm going to activate the knife tool again, Shift K or capital K, and I'll right-click straight down the side of the head there. And then hit spacebar to deactivate the tool. And again, more point massaging here. And at this point we're still in the very early stages, so we don't have to be too accurate. But I just like to keep the general form. Okay. So now I hit Tab key. You see we've starting to get a little more angularity in the design, which is what the concept art looks like, so that's what we're going for. And again, I'm going to just do a little bit of point manipulation here. And the next thing I'm going to do is start adding more detail to the front section where I'm going to need all of the eyes and nose and mouth detail to be. What I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth shift just this front section here. I'm going to select these 8 polygons right in the front there. I'm going to activate the smooth shift tool, Shift F. I'm going to right click once. And then what I'm going to do is use the stretch tool to stretch this geometry inward. So under Modify, the stretch tool, it's H. I'm just going to stretch that in. And the first thing I notice is that in the side view here, I've placed the cursor right in the center of the geometry, and it's stretching upward. Because I've got the origin of the tool's effectiveness, the area of influence of the tool's effectiveness is on the object's origin. What I want to do is switch that so that the area of influence is based on the mouse, the cursor. So I'm going to come over to the bottom section here, right next to symmetry where it says modes. I'm going to change Action Center Origin to Action Center Mouse. If it's already on Action Center Mouse, just leave it. And now it'll stretch. The center of influence will be where I place the cursor. So if I place it right in the center of that geometry in the side view, you can see how it's pulling towards the cursor. If I place it way over here, it pulls towards that way over here. So basically what I want to do is right in the center there. In the top view, I'm just going to stretch it a little like that. And again, toggle with the tab key here. What I'm going to do now that I've created more geometry is Control T, more dragging to manipulate the points here. And what I'm doing here is creating the area that will be ultimately the eye area and the cheek section. And I'm just kind of dragging the points around the side view. And then what I'm going to do is come into the perspective view here. And I'm going to drag some points around in there as well. So starting getting that indentation there that represents that region. Dragging. So I've created more detail only where I need it. I'll continue to do that throughout the front of the face and try and leave the back of the head relatively untouched. So the next thing I'm going to do, still we're in a very basic form, I'm going to add more detail to the front of the face so I can start to get the geometry I need to create the things like the nose, the eyes, and the mouth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these polygons right on the front plane there. Just those polygons. And I'm going to Shift F to activate the Smooth Shift tool again. And right click once. And then the H button on the key to activate the Stretch tool. And I'm just going to stretch them in the front view here. And then a little bit in the side view as well, just to pull them out like that. So now I've got more detail in the front. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to perform that operation one more time to the polygons that I still have selected. So Shift F for Smooth Shift. And right click once. And the front view here, I'm going to stretch right in. And the side view a little bit too, just to keep it from getting too dented there. So now I have a bunch of added detail in there, but not quite the right shape that I need. If I hit Tab right now, we can see we've got some sort of a strange shape going on. But again, whenever I add detail, the next phase is to massage the points by dragging them around. In this stage, it starts to get a little bit cluttered in here, and especially in the front view. So what I want to do here is make the view a little bit easier to deal with. So what I want to do is basically hide the geometry back here so I don't see it when I'm working in the front view here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all these polygons back here in the back of the head. And I'm going to go over to Display here. I'm going to say Hide Selected. This is also the minus key on the keyboard. So now I've hidden that geometry that's back there. It's still there, it's just out of the view. So now when you look in the front view, you can see it's much less confusing and distracting. So again, I'm going to go ahead and massage the points a bit here. And just try to get them into a better shape. And if you look in the side view over here, same thing. Let's try and pull these out a little. Pull these forward a little bit, the brow section. And I'm starting to shape the eye region. And then I'm going to start pulling the points around the jaw line and the mouth area as well. And again, this character's got sort of a goofy chin going on, so I'm going to pull these points out, make that chin sort of stick out even more here. So what I want to do is add more detail right in the middle of the brow so I can make the brow's furrow. The shapes in animation are stem from real-world anatomy to make the characters believable to the audience, even though they look stylized, not like real characters. So what I have right now is this shape in the center here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select a few of these polygons, say these 8 polygons right in the center here, and I'm going to smooth shift those again. So Shift F to smooth shift, and I'm going to right click once, and then I'm going to hit H to use the stretch tool. I'm going to go ahead and stretch those right in there. And the side view maybe a little bit as well. Now again, you get sort of this weird look in the subpatch mode, but every time I add detail, next step is to massage the points. So basically what I have is that little pinch. Looks like what happened is, in that stretch, I broke the symmetry here in the center. Now this happens occasionally when the data gets shifted. So basically what I want to do is just quickly re-mirror this head to get it back on track with symmetry. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to unhide the geometry that I've hidden, which is backslash on the keyboard. Turn symmetry off down here, and select half the head here. I'm just going to hit X, cut that right out. And then I'm going to go ahead and select a lot of the points, especially the ones that I know, right in that bunch there that are out of whack here. Might as well select them all. And I want those to be snapped back right to that x-axis. So now I'm going to go over to the Detail tab, use a tool called Set Value. And Set Value will basically take whatever points you've selected and place them on a specific point on either of the 3 axes. In this case I want it to be 0 on the X. So I'm just going to hit OK. And it doesn't look like much happened, but basically any of the points that I had in there that were selected that weren't right on the x-axis now are. So now what I'm going to do is use the Mirror tool under Multiply here, Mirror, and I'm just going to open up the numeric panel, be the easiest way to do it, and axis X centers all 0. And I'll leave this little Merge Points button selected. That way any of the points that are directly on the mirror plane, in this case the 0 on the x-axis, will get merged. So just hit spacebar to deactivate the tool. Now let's turn symmetry back on, and looks like we're all fixed. So let's select this geometry again, and hit plus again. And let's zoom back in on this region. And I'm just going to drag the points around a bit. And I'm doing it in the side view as well as the front view. And I'm going to come into the perspective view as well. And what I'm going to kind of do is kind of smooth this out a little bit. But I've created the landscape to be able to create those shapes, specifically that brow furrow that I might need. And I'm going to continue to drag some points here a little bit. And there we go. Again, I've added some detail. I'm going to unhide. When I unhide, I can see that I've accidentally left the geometry that I had hidden was in polygon mode. The geometry I was working with is in subpatch mode. A quick way to fix that is use this statistics panel. So I'm going to come over to the modeler drop down here, and in Windows, I'm going to scroll over to statistics, excuse me. And basically what I have is faces and subpatches. The faces are the polygons. Subpatches are the subdivided polygons that we have there. It's all the same model still, although it looks like it's separated. It's just that we've got 2 things going on. So I'm going to hit the plus button next to faces. And I'm just going to hit tab. And I'll deselect that geometry and we're all fixed. I'm going to close the statistics panel, which is the W on the keyboard. We'll be referring back to that in the future. And this is a good point to save the model. We've made a few changes to what we had when we were using head 01. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift S, which isn't save object, but save object as. So I could change the name from head 01 to head 02. This way, we won't lose anything that we had going in head 01. So now I'm going to get focused back on this region again. So what I want to do is start creating the area around the eyes. Because I'm going to select more of the middle section here. I'm going to select these polygons in here. And what I'm also going to do is select some of these geometry down here. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth shift this section inward. And that way this will give me a little bit more detail in this region to create the nose later on. So what I'm going to do is I've got this section selected. I'm going to smooth shift. Shift F, right click once, and then I'm going to stretch inward there. And again, right after this, I'm going to do some more manipulating of the points there. And deselect that geometry there. Again, I've crowded this area a bit more. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the points around a bit, just to keep the shape the way I want it. And all what I'm doing here is generally creating the landscape, the points and polys that I need to make these shapes. And this will represent the nose region in the future. Good. And I've also given myself a little bit more detail in the brow section to create the different morph targets for brow shapes and things like that. So I'm going to look at this section again here. And just going to shape these a little bit more. Pull some of this in. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this whole piece of geometry here. I'm going to try and stretch it in a little bit. And I'm going to pull some of this inward too. If I have to, I can always add more detail by smooth shifting if I need to. Okay. Again, this is really a cartoony character, so I'm not going to worry about making a human tear duct or anything like that. It's just going to be a cartoon eye for this cartoon character. So just analyzing the shape I have. Pull it in a little bit here. And adjust the brows a little bit. There we go. And look at this region here. And I'm going to smooth shift these polygons. I'm going to stretch them in like that a little bit, pull them back. And toggle it with the tab key, just see what I've got so far. Okay. I'll zoom back in here. Now I'm going to select those polygons that I had done again. Smooth shift them one more time. This time stretch them in about that much. And in the top view, pull them forward a bit. Just drag the points around here a little bit. So I've got these sort of socket looking things. And let's look at it in subpatch mode here. Pull that out a bit. Pull them brown out. Okay. And I'm going to massage some more points right in the eye socket here. This is generally going to be the upper lid section. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these polygons here, subpatch mode, the bottom lid, and I smooth shift those. Shift F, and then I'm going to move them back. And then for now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cut them out. So I've essentially got a hole there. That's ultimately going to be where the eyeballs go through. And just to get a feel, again, the design might not look right while you're creating the landscape. Once you massage the points and edit them the way you need, you can start to bring out the form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unhide. Again, let's bring up that statistics panel again because got our old half and half problem there. I can see what I've just created in relation to the rest of the head here. Again, I'm going to bring it up a little bit. Let's select just this eye section here. Right. And just bring it up. Okay. And let's look at these brows here. There we go. One thing I want to do is have, now that I've got the eyes in place, so I'm going to have a bit more of a definitive brow region here. What I want to do is, like the concept art, I want to have a little bit more of a ridge pulling out right above the eyes, so the character can really be emotive with his eyebrows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the geometry that I have here, right above the eyes here. And I'm going to smooth shift that. Just going to Shift F, right click once, and then stretch, stretch, maybe move it out a little bit. Again, right now, it looks a little unnatural. What I'm going to do is I'm going to massage the points around. So let's go back to selecting this region and hit plus. Okay. And I'm going to zoom in over here. Pull this closer into the eye a little bit. And start to notice a shape that I want to edit. Generally, any eyebrow shape that is not just a standard default position would be a morph target, an expression of some sort. So I want to change the flow right here where the eyebrow section ends. The geometry that was changed from the smooth shift. So what I want to use is a tool called Spin Quads, which will take two adjacent four-sided polygons and alter their direction. So I'm going to come over to the Detail section and find the Spin Quads tool, which is Control K. I push the button and you can see what happens to the polygons here. They basically change direction. So now it follows more the path around the eye there. I'm going to pull some of this geometry inward. And I'm going to toggle with the tab key to see how it looks. And now what I have is a landscape I need to create the different shapes, different emotions and things like that for the eyebrows as well as the eyes. So what I'm going to do next is focus on getting the shapes exactly how I want them in the base. So the first thing I want to look at is the eye socket here. Now if you look at the eye socket, we've got all the detail we need, all the geometries there. When you look in the top view here, you can see that it's not really ready since it can't really go around an eyeball yet. It's sort of slanted. So what I want to do is sort of adjust these points to make them more fit around an eyeball. So I'm going to grab the magnet tool. So come over to the Modify tab, find the magnet tool here. And in the top window here, I'm going to right click and drag to pull out this disk, which is an area of influence. Pull out the area of influence and put it right over those points. And I'm just going to left click and drag, kind of round them out a little bit. You can left click and drag and get a feel for how it's manipulating the geometry. And again, what I'm going to have to do from there is to continue to manipulate the points. So let's take a look again here in this section. Now I've got the eyes to fit more of an eye socket shape. I've also altered, some of the geometry in here. So I'm going to go ahead and drag around some of these points. See in the top view here. And then in the perspective view, I'm going to take a look at what's happening right under the brows here. Basically, I want to avoid those large pinches there. And I want to keep that crease right where the lid is supposed to be. So I'm just dragging the points around by putting the drag cursor right over the intersections there. Zoom out a bit. And I'm going to zoom back in here. I'm going to take this section here and pull it down a little bit. And grab some of these polygons, drag some of these points down a bit. See what I've got here so far. Again, focus on this area. Now let's edit the lids a little bit as well. I'm just sort of looking at the shapes, deciding what areas need work. Okay. So, what we're going to do next is unhide the hidden geometry, hitting the backslash. Just see how what I've done so far relates to the rest of the head. See if there's any troubled areas. And just edit points around a bit as needed. Then what I want to do also is focus in on the lower lid here. And I'm going to select the facing geometry, hit plus and hide the unselected. look at this area right below the eye there. So I want to have a little bit of a bottom lid. So I'm going to grab these 3 polygons here. And again, I'm going to smooth shift them. So Shift F, right click, and then I'm going to stretch. Pull them right in like that. And let's go to the side view. See what's happening in the side view there. I'm going to pull those out as well. And then I'm going to drag the points around a bit. And find that, again, just creating the shape that I think I'll need. And similar to what I had done with the eyebrow, find that, again, I want to change the flow of the geometry a little bit right in here. Let's take a look. What I'm do is going to hit Control K, spin quads. And as I keep hitting this Control K, you can see the geometry just keeps spinning. This is how it was originally, maybe something more like that. Now I'll drag these points up here. And I'm going to toggle into subpatch mode so I can get a better idea of what shapes I'm creating here. And in the perspective window, I'm just going to drag some of these points. Again, I just want the hint of an eye socket rather than just a smooth transition. Might be a little too much there. And occasionally, I might see some instances where I want to spin quads, but I'll just experiment with it. For instance, right here, the opposite side of the lid, spin quads there and see what happens. So, grab these 2 polygons, and again, I spun them twice and get a little bit better of a flow there. See how it looks here. Drag these around a bit. Again, it's a lot of point tweaking, a lot of point manipulation. And I start to get that shape. And I'll unhide again, backslash. See how it's looking. So now what I have is basically the brow section and the eyes. And what I'm going to do is when I get closer to the end of the model, I'm going to start adding extra detail like the actual eyebrows and the eyeballs that go in the socket. I'm going to leave them for now because I'm always wanting to edit those shapes. Maybe the eyes are going to be too big or too small, so I'll add those at the end when I know the face is the right shapes the way I want them. The next section we're going to focus on is the area just below the eyes and above the mouth, and create the detail that we need to add the shapes for the nose. So the first thing I'm going to do is take what we've got so far, and again I'm going to select all this area right in here, and I'm going to hit plus again. Let's hide the unselected sections. The area I'm going to be focusing on is right in here. All this that will ultimately be the nose. First thing I'm going to do is just move these points around a little bit. Let's move these up here a bit. Okay. And what I want to do is a little bit of pre-planning. There's certain shapes I know I'm going to want. For instance, laugh lines and things like that, that stem right from the outer rim of the nostril. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this section of geometry right here, and I'm going to smooth shift that inward a bit. So, Shift F, right click, and stretch, which is H. Pull them out a little in the side view here. And Control T. Let's do some dragging, manipulate these points around a bit. And before I go on to create the rest of the nose, I'm just going to bridge a section here. This little area in here can be connected. I've got a smooth shift operation up here and a smooth shift down here, resulting in this shape right in the middle here. So what I'm going to do is, if you hit Tab, you might notice that the flow of polygons in that area isn't really optimized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these polygons right here, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit X and remove them. Because what I can do is connect all that geometry and make a smooth transition. So let's turn symmetry off and use the weld tool. I'm going to grab this point here and then select that one and hit Control W for weld. And I'm going to do the same thing for these two. And then lastly this one. So now I've seamlessly connected that section. So let's turn symmetry back on and manipulate these points a little. So now I've got a much nicer flow in here. Okay. So now what I'm looking at is the bridge of the nose in here and what will be the actual nose here. So what I want to do is, since this character has, again, that sort of funny ratio of cranium to jaw, I'm going to pull the nose section up a bit. I'll grab some of these, just move them up, because I want him to have almost a kind of ridiculously small nose to accentuate the fact that he's got an even more ridiculous large jaw. Okay. And if I zoom out a bit, you can see what I've got so far. Starting to get that shape. So I'm just going to select these polygons in here, the bridge of the nose as well as the actual nose, and a smooth shift them. So I'm going to Shift F, right click, and then I'm going to H for the stretch tool and just start stretching a little bit here. And then what I'm going to do, again, I've added some details. Now I've got to spend some time manipulating the points a bit. So if you look, I'm doing it in the front view here. Then I look in the side view. It's got a lot of tweaking there I got to throw in there as well. And sort of make it start to come out like the nose shape. Okay, let's see what we've got. Zoom out a bit. Okay. I'm going to zoom in again, a little closer here. And let's take a look back at this area again. Now I've pretty much got set on the bridge of the nose. So what I want to do is now focus on the front part section of the nose. So I'm going to take just the polygons right on the tip there and a smooth shift them again. Right click, H, and do some stretching here and pull them right out. And I'm just going to tweak some points here. And you notice the points I'm maneuvering around just about every view. Side view, perspective view, front view. Okay. Just all manipulating the points. Okay. Now the next section I want to focus on is the nostril area, which is right next to the nose, right on the sides here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a look at these polygons right in here. And I'm going to take these two here that I've got selected, and I'm going to smooth shift those. Stretch tool. In the front view here, stretch a little. See what we have. Okay. And I've got to edit the points a bit more. Now what I'm going to do is I'm manipulating some in the side view. Then what I'm going to do is look primarily in the perspective view here. Select some of this geometry in the perspective view and take a closer look at it. And basically what I'm doing is I'm dragging the points around and then holding down the alternate key to actually rotate the geometry. So drag, hold down Alt, spin the geometry a little, and I start to get that shape. Zoom out a bit here. You can see it's starting to look like a nose. It's pretty small, but I'm creating a landscape. I can always scale it up if I need to, scale it out. Again, I do want him to have a relatively small nose, so it's not too far off from what I'm going to ultimately want. Let's go ahead and stretch that out a little bit anyway. So I'm going to grab some of these polygons here, just the ones in the nose, and let's stretch them out a bit. Let's make the nose a little bigger, and in the side view as well, pull it out a bit. Manipulate the points of the bridge of the nose a bit more here. It's a little more goofy. Okay. And of course now what I need to do is focus on the underside, because what I need on this nose obviously is some nostrils. So let's grab all these polygons right at the bottom of the nose here. So right now I really don't have the appropriate flow of geometry to create the nostrils and still retain the midsection of the nose and the bottom. So I'm going to take this whole section here and I'm going to smooth shift it. So Shift F, right click, and then in the side view let's stretch it out a little bit. Stretch it inward in the front view here. And then take a look at what we have in the perspective view here. Let's go ahead and select them so we can see them better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some of these inward more. Kind of like that. To create the midsection there. And then I'm going to take a look at the other shapes I have here. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is shift in the nostrils. So let's take a look at this section here. These polygons right here, you probably smooth shift those in and make some nostrils. So let's look at the underside here. Smooth shift tool, let's right click once, and the top view here, stretch them inward a bit, and then in the front view, see how that looks. Zoom out a bit. Okay. And again, since I'm trying to keep this character more of a stylized cartoon character, I'm not going to give him complete nostrils here, just sort of the hint of these nostrils. Of course, if you're doing something of a realistic head or a more photoreal head, the principle is the same. You would just smooth shift those nostrils in more until you have a cavity there. Let's zoom out and see how it looks. Start to see now, again, I have the landscape there, but I think I need to adjust the shape a bit. Looking especially in the profile here. It's a little flat right there. So let's zoom back in here. And let's tweak this out a bit by doing some more massaging of the points. Add a little more dimension there to the front section of the nose. And once you have this landscape, you can really manipulate these points around to create a nose however you'd like. If you want them to have a big long nose or a big fat nose or a tiny long skinny nose, just take the points and manipulate them around as you need to. So let's unhide the hidden geometry and see how it relates to the rest of the head. Again, we have there, looks pretty good in terms of relating to the concept art. So again, he's got the small head thing going on with the large jaw. So the small nose, while it looks small on this head, actually fits what we need for the artwork and the design of the character overall. The next section we're going to look at is the area just beneath the nose. We're going to create the detail we need in the geometry to make a mouth that we can animate. First thing I'm going to do is select the geometry in the front of the head, and again hit the plus sign to hide the unselected geometry, which I won't be looking at. And I'm going to focus on this area right below the nose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these polygons right beneath the nose and right above the chin here. So I'm going to start by creating the laugh lines. So I'm going to take these polygons, I'm going to smooth shift once, shift F and right click, and I'm going to stretch. Let's stretch a little on the side view here. And I'm going to start manipulating the points a bit. So I'll pull these up a bit here. And what I want to do is in the perspective view here, again using the alternate button to move the geometry around, just going to push some of these in. Start to create that laugh line. Let's zoom in on right under the nostril here. Just pull that down. And let's look down here, pull some of this geometry inward here. And let's take a look here, drag that up a bit. And let's clean this up a bit here. I'm going to try spinning quads right here. Let's see how that looks. Okay. Still got a little crease under there. Let's try and fix that. There we go. And when we go to add in detail like the cheeks and things like that, we'll be able to add more detail to these laugh lines. Again, it's just a lot of using the drag tool to manipulate the points around. Let's take a look at the geometry. Okay. Alright, so now let's focus on this section here again. And again, I'm going to do another smooth shift operation. Try and manipulate the points slightly. Smooth shift. Let's stretch them on in there. Let's widen this section a bit. Okay, and let's look in the side view here and stretch them forward a bit. Move them up a bit. We have the beginnings of a mouth anyway. Let's take a look in the perspective view. And let's drag some of these out here a bit. Interesting little section here. Let's fix this up. Okay. Okay, so, and let's look back at this section again. Turn the patch off here for a second, and we'll start to create the lip region. Okay. So I'll grab some of these polygons here, right in the lip section there. And again, I'm going to smooth shift once, right click, and I'm going to stretch them inward. Actually, just a little bit. Pull them forward here. Now let's look in the perspective window here. Let's go ahead and drag some of these points around a little bit. These are the corners of the mouth. Keep those a little bit closer in. Let's grab some of these under here. Okay. Now let's grab these 4 front polygons one more time and smooth shift again. Right click, stretch them out in the front view here, pull them in a bit. Let's start in the side view this time. Manipulate the points a little bit inward here. This profile of the lips. Keep the corner of the mouth back a bit. So, starting to see what looks like the shape of the mouth there. Okay, let's zoom back in here. And a couple more smooth shifts we're going to do to these polygons right in here. We're going to start to create the interior section of the mouth. Let's move those down a bit. Okay. So smooth shift, and this time let's hit the T button for move. I'll just move them back. Just bring them right in. And I'm going to stretch a little bit in the top view. Pull them in this way. In the front view slightly. Okay. And what I'm going to do at this point is take this section of polygons and give them a different surface name. Because ultimately they will be the interior of the mouth. If we give them a different surface name now, it will enable us to hide this geometry easier so we can continue to work on the rest of the mouth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Q. Let's bring up the surface editor here, surface changer. And let's call this Hero Inner Mouth. And give it a different color. Maybe this dark reddish here for now. And say OK. And now from here, whatever polygons we smooth shift out of these will retain that surface name. So when we create the rest of the cavity, we'll have all the polygons within there have that surface on them. So let's go ahead and, with these still selected, one more smooth shift. Just right click once. And then stretch them out in the front view here. Kind of big. I'm going to make the cavity here. Move them in a bit in the top view. And let's go to the drag tool, Control T. Just kind of move these points around a bit so that they are more circular than the inherent shape of the mouth that they were smooth shifted from. Okay. Alright. And then one more smooth shift here. Let's move it back. And I'll just stretch it in the side view here. Right to a flat end there. So now we basically have an interior section of the mouth you can see into. What we'll do is we'll come back to that to add the interior detail. But for now I'm going to hide that geometry. So what I'm going to do is open that statistics panel again. It's W on the keyboard. And let's see, we want surface. And we want to select that surface we just created for the inner mouth. So I'm going to hit the plus key next to that surface. And I'm going to hit the minus key on the keyboard, which is hide selected. So I'm left with just the lips to work with for now. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the lips. We will use the drag tool. I'm going to start in the perspective window here. And start dragging them in a bit. Let's look at the corners of the mouth. You can pull back a little. And let's see, go in here. I'm just kind of moving the points around. Select some of the points in the bottom lip here. Some of the polygons, rather. And I'm going to move some of those points around a bit with the drag tool, the perspective window. Now when we zoom out, you can see the mouth's still a little bit too small. So we can come back in here a little bit, stretch it out a bit. And let's fix that upper shape right there. Pull some of those middle points down a bit. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is going to unhide what we've got hidden. See how it relates to the rest of the head. But right now we've got a significant amount of detail in terms of the different shapes we need and things like that. So what I'm going to do is going to reopen the statistics panel here, and let's go into polygon mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select again that inner mouth section, and I'm going to hit the minus key on the keyboard, hide it, and then let's select all the front face of the character, and I'm going to assign that a part name. So as we add more detail, it will be easier to separate it from things like the inner mouth and things like that. So what I'm going to do is go to, so in the display we're going to find under grouping, I'm going to say change part name. Now this existing geometry doesn't have a part yet. This will enable us to assign it a certain name. I'm just going to call it face. Say OK. So now let's unhide everything again. We have our inner mouth still in there. But we can use the statistics panel again. And there's a section for part there. You can select the face and hide everything else. And what I'm going to do now is zoom back into the mouth and look at the lips. Now, any piece of geometry can only be assigned one part. So whereas I have a part for the entire face, I also want a different selection option for the lips as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the bottom lip here, and I'm going to change the sketch color, which gives me another selection option. Let's go to Detail and Sketch Color, and let's just make the bottom lip blue. And let's grab the top lip now. And I'm going to change the sketch color of the top lip, and let's just make it red. So now what I have, zoom out, unhide everything again here. Let's open the statistics panel again. So now I can select just my face and unhide everything else. And within the face, I can also come down to color and say select the blue stuff, or select the red stuff. Whereas if I had made the lips a separate part, they would no longer be associated with the part called face. So now what I can do is edit the lips however I want them, and if in the future when I need to adjust them for creating animation shapes, I can always access top or bottom through these sketch colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, for the sake of presentation, I'm going to go ahead and close his mouth. So I'm just going to grab the polygons and just kind of moving the polygons down to actually close the actual mouth. Just grab, maybe give him a bit of a frown too. Let's see, zoom in here, take a look at. This kind of funny shape to his mouth here. Now let's pull the top lip in a little bit. Everything is easier to edit when you're in symmetry mode, but ultimately when it comes time to animate the character and to create the shapes and things like that, you almost never want to work with anything that's a perfectly symmetrical shape. For the sake of editing, it's always easier to work with a symmetrical model. Okay. So I'm just going to look at the area just beneath the mouth, right and around the jawline. Let's accentuate that a little here. More pronounced shape there. Okay. They've certainly given him a giant chin, but again, that sort of fits in with the design of the character. I stretch in a little bit here. It's always better to go too extreme and dial it back than have something that's not extreme enough and look bland. Okay. Alright, so let's unhide the rest of the head. See what we've got so far. In this section, we're going to go over the techniques for creating the geometry we need to make the ear on the side of the head. So let's get started. Now in this part, what I'm going to focus on here is this area here right behind the jawline. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this geometry and paste it into the next available layer, just in case I want to go back for whatever reason. The ear is kind of a tricky section, so it's good to have a backup. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to edit the points right around the jawline a little bit, just to bring them in slightly. And just going to adjust some of the points of the jaw just to get a better shape there. And here we go. Okay. Okay. So what I'm going to start off with is these 4 polygons right here. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth shift them, right click once, and the side view I'm going to stretch them in, and in the front view I'll pull them out a little bit this way. Okay. And I'm going to take this geometry this new geometry that I've made here and just start editing the points a little bit, again to tweak the shape and get it right the way I want it. And just manipulating the points around all over the head that are joined to this section that I just created. Okay. And then let's take these 2 polygons here. Let's do spin quads on them. So now I have a more definitive line going down the jaw there. And the ear is going to be right where these polygons are here. So let's just move the points around a little bit. Bring these down a bit. Now you can see, in relation to the rest of the head, the ear is too high at the moment. We're going to adjust all this geometry anyway, just when we go into cleanup and make it look more like the artwork there. So let's take these 2 polygons here and focus on them. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hit the plus key with those 2 selected, so that I've hidden everything else but these 2 polygons. Because what I want to do is create the ear and focus on the ear and then adjust it to fit the side of the head rather than have to worry about how it looks on the head while I'm doing it. Because we can always scale it. So I'm just going to smooth shift and stretch those in one time. And then do the same thing one more time. In the front view, let's just flatten them out a little bit. Okay. And let's take these 2 polygons here. And I'm going to bevel them. So let's go to the Multiply tab. And right at the top here is Bevel. And just going to click and drag, bevel them inward a little bit. And I'm going to deselect that tool. And let's select these 2 polygons right here in the center. And I'm going to spin quads on those. And then I'm going to take these 2 polygons here, and I'm going to spin quads on those 2 as well. And I'm just going to drag the points to make this shape. So now what I have is this kind of like an upside down backwards G starting shape of the ear. But what I want to do is make it so that the end of the G isn't connected to the beginning here, like it is there. So I'm going to take these two polygons here, and I'm going to smooth shift them. Let's just stretch them inward here. And I'm just going to manipulate the points a little. Okay, so now I have back to the upside down backwards G, but it's no longer connected. Okay, and I'm just going to manipulate the points around a little bit. Let's go ahead and take these two as well, spin quads on them twice. Okay. Okay. So then, so far we've got still a flat plane. Let's go ahead and select this sort of upside down backwards G. Now let's smooth shift it and bring it out a little bit. That's the smooth shift and then a move. And then let's go to the top view and rotate it a little bit. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is toggle and see what I get. Basically, so far I have like what looks like an extruded upside down G. I'm going to edit the points to start to make it look like the shape I want. So let's go ahead and select all these polys right here in the front. And I can do this a lot in this perspective view. I'm just going to kind of drag the points down and edit them into this shape of the curvature of the ear. And in this section here, I'm going to try and lay a little bit more flat. I'm going to take this chunk of polygons here, right at the end there. And let's go ahead in the top view. And I'm going to use the rotate tool here. And in the top view, I'm just going to turn it like that. So now it's starting to dent inward like that. Okay. And let's continue to pull some of these points down a little bit closer. Just like so. Okay. Let's drag some of these out here. And so a lot of point tweaking and editing. Okay. Okay. So now let's go ahead and grab these two polygons as well as the four inside here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to smooth shift those and I'm going to stretch them out a bit and pull them out a little bit here. Just move the points around a little bit here. Try and create those subtle shapes within the ear. See what we have so far. And again, just sort of adding detail and then shifting the points around. And let's go ahead and grab these two guys. Spin quads. Okay. And I'm going to grab this one, bring it up a bit. Whoops. And let's take a look down here. If you have a mirror at home, it wouldn't help to just look at your own ear and see kind of what shapes there are in there. A lot of interesting, intricate shapes. That make it a tricky piece of geometry to create. So, yeah, let's look closely here a little bit more. Starting to look a little like something. I'm going to grab these two polygons right in here. And let's go ahead and smooth shift those as well. And what I'm going to do with those, I stretched them in a little bit. I'm just going to make like a cavity. Just move them in. And then again, edit the points. Let's see what we've got here. Okay. Then what I'm going to do, let's look closely here. I take this little end piece here, and let's go ahead and smooth shift that as well. And I'm going to move it. It's kind of out like that. And let's go back in and drag some of these points around a bit. Create that little earpiece that kind of sticks out. And maybe we can adjust this a bit too. Everybody's ears look different and have different shapes in these areas and things like that. Again, I think examining your own ear is a good way to figure out what shapes are where, or photographic reference. With a character like this, we don't have to be too concerned with the reality of the shape of the ear, but we want it to be believable that it's an ear. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I've got the landscape there, and I'll further tweak it some more. But before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to unhide our hidden geometry. And at this stage, don't be alarmed if it looks somewhat unnatural, because again, we have the landscape, and all we need to do is just adjust the points and manipulate the geometry. So again, I've unhidden faces rather than subpatches. So let's just turn those faces into subpatches with the statistics panel. And again, kind of looks like an ear, but it doesn't look like it's placed properly. Again, no problem. We'll just start manipulating the points, moving things around. Let's go ahead and adjust here. Let's grab some of these and pull them inward a bit. See what we can do. And just spin a couple quads. Let's try spinning these. And manipulate the points a little bit here. Try spinning these as well. There we go. And also what I want to do is get a little bit more of the backing of the ear going. But first I'm going to go ahead and edit this so I can get it sort of at least in the right scale and position. Let's go ahead and select the main chunk of ear here. And in the top view, let's go over here, just rotate it out a little bit. And in the front view, maybe we'll rotate it this way a little bit. So for now, let's go back to right behind the ear. And let's take a look at this area right in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these polygons and smooth shift those. And then I'm going to stretch it inward. And let's go ahead and edit it a little bit here. And then I'm just going to spin quads here. So there we go. And then let's spin quads down here. There we go. Then we have sort of a back to the ear. So let's go ahead and focus on that area. Start manipulating some of the points around a bit. And let's pull this out a bit here. Okay. And let's look a little closer in here. Let's pull these in a little bit closer to the head here. See. Okay. All right, let's move them down a little bit. And turn, we'll adjust some geometry in here. Pull this down a bit. Let's take a closer look here. Okay. And let's go ahead and make them a little bit more rounded and kind of sticking out a little bit more. And I kind of want them to look sort of like it's kind of a cartoony character. So, just going to go ahead and rotate again in the top view. Let's pull this part out a little bit here. And stretch it down a little bit. Okay. And so, there we have it. Okay, so now let's take the geometry in the bottom of the head and extrude out our neck from that. So in this section, again, I'm going to do what I had done previously. So I'm just going to copy this, paste it into the next layer. It's a good idea to keep saving as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on all the geometry underneath here to create the neck. So what I'm going to start by doing is taking all of these polygons here, including the ones right beneath the chin, and I'm going to smooth shift them and bring them in a bit to keep that line of the jaw sort of squared off and firm. So let's go ahead and take this geometry and smooth shift once, and the top view here, let's just stretch it in a bit. And then in the side view, let's pull it down a bit here and start dragging the points around. So what I want to do is have this guy have pretty much a big thick neck, a neck like a big bodybuilder, like a paint can basically. It's going to come right out the back of his head and be pretty much the same width as his jawline here. So I'm just manipulating the points around here. I'm going to drag them around a bit. And the underside here, let's go ahead and look there. I'm just going to take geometry underneath here, kind of round it off a little bit. It's just to keep that line sort of definitive here. Okay. And in the back section, I'm going to spend some time sort of straightening it out because I kind of want the neck to sort of shoot right down off the back of the head, almost as if there's no indentation there, because it's just his neck is just so thick that you can hardly see the back of his skull there. Okay. So let's take these two polygons here, and I'm going to spin quads on them twice. Okay. And let's look back here again. I'm going to pull this geometry outward like that. This is right the back of his jaw right here. And this is the back of his head. And if the neck comes out and you're thinking it looks absurd, then that's good, because then that probably means that we're getting the idea of the character across. So far you can see all we've done is just sort of made that line more definitive. So let's grab this geometry here, and maybe that one. Well, we'll stick with this. Just pull that point up a bit. This is the area that's going to come down as his neck. So we'll start with a smooth shift. Smooth shift, right click once, and just bring it down a bit. Okay. And I'm just going to tweak some of the points a bit here, sort of flatten this out a bit. And there's a big old muscle that runs down from right behind your ear through in your neck. And I want this guy to be pretty prominent. I'm going to take these two polygons here, and let's go ahead and spin quads on them twice. Let's drag this geometry here like that, because this section here will ultimately smooth shift out to make that giant muscle there. Bring this a little forward. Okay. All right. Let's maybe bring that in a bit. So right now it doesn't look right, but I'm just going to do some more smooth shifting and point massaging here. Let's do a little on the back of the neck here. Just widen these out a little bit here. Okay. And let's go back to these bottom polygons here again. Let's move it up slightly, and then I'm going to smooth shift one more time and bring it down again here. And let's go in the front view this time and just widen it out a little bit. Okay. And just tweak the points a bit here, here. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take these two polygons, just spin quads of the nose as well. And let's drag the points in here. Okay, let's pull that one in a bit. And let's just widen it out here a little bit. Okay. So now this row here represents that section that we're going to smooth shift out to create the neck muscle. So what I'm going to do is focus on this area right in here. So let's grab that and zoom in a bit. And you can see the direction of the polygons. I want to edit that slightly. Let's go ahead and take this polygon here and hit X. We'll cut it out. And then let's turn symmetry off for a moment. And I'm going to grab this point, then this one, And in the front view here, deselect one side, and let's go ahead and weld those. And then I'm going to do the same thing, this time deselect the one that's already been welded. So we've cleaned up this jawline flow here a little bit. Okay. Alright. Be sure to turn symmetry back on before you start doing anything there. Okay. And now let's go ahead and grab this geometry here. And I'm just going to edit the points a little bit, make this a little bit fatter here. Let's go ahead and pull that out. Okay. Okay. And then what we're going to do is smooth shift. Right click once, stretch a little in the side view here. And then in the front view, let's pull them out a little bit. And then let's come up in here and start editing the points. So we can get that big old neck muscle going. And again, don't be afraid to really pull it out, because this guy is supposed to be sort of ridiculous in terms of the size of his jaw and neck and body and things like that. Let's look right up under the ear too. Right there, where we made this, right above where we made the smooth shift. Let's go ahead and spin quads there. Let's do it twice. And looks like here we edited when I didn't have the symmetry on. So let's go ahead and re-mirror our head, just like we did before. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now that we have the majority of the landscape in here, let's just look at the overall head and shape, and we'll just make a few edits to tweak it into shape. So the first thing I want to do, just by looking at the model, is shrink up the eyes a bit and take the entire face mass and maybe shrink the whole thing up a little bit to give him more of that disproportionate look. And like the top of his cranium is much smaller in ratio to the bottom of his jaw here. So what I'm going to do is come back to the statistics panel here, letter W, and select that face part we made. And some of the other stuff down here got assigned to that part because it was all smooth shifted off that geometry. But really all I need right now is just the face front. So let's go ahead and hit plus. And I'm going to focus right up on the eyes there. Select some of that geometry and zoom in on it here. And I want to shrink the eyes up, and in doing so probably also move them a little bit closer together, and in turn shrink up the rest of the face a little bit. So I'm just going to stretch and stretch. I don't want to go too far with it because I don't want him to look, you know, too goofy or anything, or look not like his character. So let's go ahead and that's pretty good because we're going to end up shrinking up the size of the head as well. And then let's grab, say, this whole chunk right here, and I'm just going to move that all up. Let's bring a little of these with it. Make that chin even more crazy big. There we go. Okay, and let's take a look here. Let's pull these in a bit. All this geometry here. Okay, now let's unhide. See what we've got. Okay, let's take the ear section and grab some of these as well. And I'm just going to move them in a bit. And move them up. There we go. Starting to look a little more goofy. Let's pull these in a bit too. Grab some of this geometry. And let's go ahead back to the magnet tool here under Modify. And the top view, let's just right click out. Squish it in a little bit here. I want him to have sort of like a little head going on, little top of his head. Just pull these points in. There we go. And let's rotate these in a bit. And take a look at his forehead. I'll just smooth it out a little bit. Okay. Let's see. Just more point tweaking. And maybe we'll do one last thing here. Just give him a little bit more cheekbone. So, I'm just going to smooth shift those. Stretch them out a bit. Let's pull them forward here. Okay, and then we need to do a couple of spin quads. Let's grab these and spin quads. And let's see, let's grab maybe these and spin quads on those as well. Follow that shape. Okay. Okay. See if we need to do anything here. Yeah. Let's try these two here. Spin quads on those. And drag. And let's try these. There we go. That was a good move in terms of this geometry, but kind of got a little wacky in other places. Let's try that again. A lot of times it's just trial and error. Try something out. If it doesn't work, try something different. And let's take a look in here. Okay, he's got a pretty funny profile. Maybe just a little too forward. And maybe just finish up here, pulling these in a little bit more. And there we go. Okay, so now we're ready to create all the extras, like the eyebrows, the eyeballs, and the inner mouth, including the teeth, to complete the model. So I'm going to start off with the eyes. First, let's go ahead and save. And then let's go into the next available layer. And we'll put our head in the background layer there. Okay, so for the eye, let's go ahead and make a ball. I've selected the ball tool, and I'm going to hold down Control. And in the front view, I'm just going to drag out a ball. This is top view as well. By holding down Control, it constrains the axis so that it becomes a perfect sphere. So I'm just going to sort of do it, even though I know that's not the right placement or size. I'm just going to make it and size it when I get it inside the head socket. So I'll probably change the numeric value from the default of 24 sides and 12 segments to something maybe more like, say, 16 sides and 8 segments. Okay. And I'll just hit the space bar here. Okay. Now, it's retained the surface of the last surface I created, so right now it's got the inner mouth surface on it. Let's go ahead and hit Q again and make a new surface for this object. Let's call it Hero Eye. And of course we'll make it white. Of course, one of the steadfast rules in terms of CG is don't make the eyes and the teeth white or too white. But when you're dealing with animation cartoon characters, which this guy is more or less kind of like, those sort of things you can do. You can get away with perfect pure white eyes and things like that. In fact, it's most of the time it's more appealing anyway. So I'm manipulating the ball in relative space of the socket. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scale it down a bit. So let's go to the Modify tab and grab the Size tool there. And I'm just going to shrink it down. Shrink it down to whatever scale you need to fit in the socket. And I'm going to push it in, and you'll notice that it's not going to fit perfect probably. But what I'm going to do is edit the geometry to make it conform to the sphere. Okay. So let's go ahead and edit the surface of the sphere. Let's open the surface editor here. And I just want to take the eye, put on smoothing. That's about all I'm going to do for it for now. You'll notice it wasn't looking smooth because it's not a subdivisional surface object. The OpenGL will display surfaces as smooth if they're subdivisional surface objects, even if the surface truly isn't smooth. Okay. So another thing I want to do to the eye is remove the unnecessary geometry. You're never really going to see much further than the back of the eye. It would really be rare to even see further than just the halfway point. But to be on the safe side, let's cut out a little bit more than the halfway part of the eye. Okay. And now I'm going to take these polygons here, all these triangles in the front, and I'm just going to hit Shift-Z. That takes all those polygons and merges them into one polygon. Okay. And this leftover point, let's just delete it. Okay. Now I'm going to take this polygon, let's give it a new surface. Let's call it Pupil, and we'll make this black. Okay. And what I'm going to do is hit B for the bevel tool that we used earlier. And I'm just going to go ahead and bevel this piece in. In the side view, I'm going to let it sink in a little bit there so that there's a little bit of an angle to the iris. Okay. And let's go ahead and select all these polygons right around there and make a new surface for those as well. We'll call them iris. And let's make them blue. Why not? He's a superhero and kind of like Superman-ish. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is I want a little trim around them. So let's go ahead and select a couple of the polygons in the iris there. And I'm going to use the bandsaw tool. And let's edit the divide. I want it closer to the edge. And went to the wrong side there. Let me just undo that. And I'll just reverse that. So now the cut's in the same place, just the opposite side there. Okay. And let's go ahead and deselect all the iris inner ones. And hit Q. Go ahead and give it that pupil surface again, which is essentially just a black surface. So obviously if you ever have an extreme close-up on the character where you get this close to the eyeball, you'd need a higher res eye. But for our purposes, this is plenty. Okay. So now, looking at the pupil versus the eye, the iris, I think I want it to shrink down even a little bit more. So let me go ahead and capital H for size. Size that down a little bit more. Move it in a little bit more here. A little bit more cartoony-like. Okay. Now let's go ahead and grab some of these polygons here and take a look at how it's conforming around the eye. I'm going to go ahead and drag. Make that form right around the eye there. And again, this is a cartoony eye, so we could take some liberties in terms of the shapes and things like that. Let's see that lid, the top lid was much too far out, so I'm going to tweak these points a bit to get the shape just right. And I'm editing this mostly in the perspective view. Let's do a little in the front here. Okay. And let's grab the eye. Let's come back to our head layer here. Let's grab the whole socket here, minus the underside of the eyebrow there. And let's pull the whole thing a little bit forward. And we'll do the same for our eye here. Okay. And of course, mirror the eye. Under multiply, let's go in the mirror. And right at 0 on the x-axis should do it. Spacebar. There, he's got a couple of eyes in there. Okay. So let's go ahead and stick the eyes right in the head there. Just cut and paste. Okay. Let's take a look right underneath here. Let's take this geometry here, and we'll give it extrude it a little bit just to give the appearance of a lash. Sort of a cartoony kind of eyelash. So let's go ahead and just move this out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and make a surface for it. Call it lash, and I'll make it black again so it stands out nicely. And let's just smooth shift, stretch, and the top view, stretch it out a little bit here. So he's got a little bit of an eyelash there. We can always edit the shape as well if we need to. Again, doing a lot of this editing in the perspective window. Okay. Let's take them here. Hide that. Go ahead and just going to grab just the geometry right at the bottom of the lid there. Move it up a little bit. There we go. And while we're at it, might as well get a skin color on him. So let's go ahead and open the statistics panel again. So what I'm going to do is just find, since we haven't named a surface thus far for his skin, I'm just going to look for the surface called default and select that. So now I've selected all of the surface that's skin there, and let's just call it hero skin, and pick a color, whatever color, something. Now let's go ahead and make his eyebrows. Now again, this particular character wears a mask, but I went ahead and made eyebrows for him anyway, just in case he ever actually, you want him to be seen as his alter ego. And before I go ahead and make the eyebrows, I'm going to spin quads right here. Let's see if we can pull out a little bit of the conflicting bumpiness going on right there. So I'm going to go ahead and spin quads like that, and we get a little more of that natural flow looking there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, let's zoom back in here for a minute. Let's just grab a row of polygons right here. And I'm going to copy those polygons and paste them in the next layer here. And let's see. So let's put that in the background there. And let's move the points forward a little bit. away from the head here. Okay. And what I'm going to do with these points, or these polygons rather, is I'm going to extrude them. So let's go ahead and select these polygons, and under multiply here we'll find the extrude button. I'm just going to bring them right back in there on a slight angle. Okay. And I'll give it a surface, maybe brows, and whatever color you want his hair to be or his eyebrows to be. And let's take a look and see how it looks. We may have to edit them further just to get the proper shape and positioning. So first thing I'm going to do is let's turn symmetry back on. And let's go ahead and just adjust some of the points here. I want the end of the eyebrow to come forward a little bit more here. Just trying to conform it to the shape that I made on the character's head. Manipulate points, move geometry around. Whatever works to get it to conform to the shape. And let's lift this side up a bit. Some more at that section. Rotate a little. And drag some points in here. Let's take a look. Right. And move those down a bit more even. Alright, so let's go ahead and stick those on the head. I'll hit S for save. Okay, so now let's go and focus on the interior of the mouth, including the tongue and the throat. So what we're going to do is bring open the statistics panel again, and we'll find our inner mouth surface there. Now let's zoom in here. Through the course of the editing, you can see that it's sort of been left behind in some of the movement and things like that. Let's go ahead and we'll deselect those, move it back up there. Okay, and let's grab it again, statistics panel. Okay, now let's hit plus to hide all the other stuff and see what we've got. Okay, now let's start with the back of the throat there. Let's go ahead and select all those polygons. I'm going to move them around a bit and create the throat area. Let's move it back just a little bit. Okay. And let's go ahead and smooth shift. Stretch them inward. And out like that. And then let's smooth shift one more time. Bring it back. This time stretch it the opposite direction. And in the side view, let's rotate it a little bit. So we start to get kind of that indentation right there. Let's go back to this. Smooth shift again. This time move them down a bit. And we'll shrink them in. And that part you really aren't going to ever really see much unless you have a shot that specifically goes down the character's throat. So maybe one more here. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is going to go back to the old knife tool. Capital K or Shift K. Let's just knife cut right through there. And what I want to focus on is these polygons right here at the bottom. So let's take a look at these. go ahead and take this point, just going to push it up a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to smooth shift. Okay. Not go too far though. So what I'm going to do now is give this surface, call it Hero Tongue, and maybe a pinkish type color for now. Okay. And then let's smooth shift it again. Pull it back a little like that. Y for rotate, a little rotate. And smooth shift again. Bring it up. Maybe this time stretch it in a little bit here. Occasionally, if you smooth shift and right click, you might accidentally drag slightly. If you drag slightly, you actually smooth shift and actually translate the extrusion. And if you do that, sometimes you break the symmetry or break the connection there. Okay. And we kind of want the tongue to roll right up to the front of the mouth there. Let's go one more. Stretch it in. And the tongue makes all sorts of different shapes, especially when you start creating the morph targets and things like that. So for now, we'll kind of make it, we'll smooth it out a bit here. Let's go ahead and look at the front. Okay. So let me bring up the statistics panel one more time. Let's grab the tongue there. And let's hide everything else. So we can work a little bit on the tongue here. Let's pull. Come in the back and pull these points out a bit. Up and over. I just sort of have that funny, cartoony look to it. And it's just a matter of manipulating the points around with the drag tool. There we go. And underneath, maybe pinch them right together, like that little thing underneath your tongue there. So you get a nice little thin piece of geometry under there. Let's see, more point manipulation here. Okay, let's unhide everything here again. And take a look at what we've got. Let's grab that statistics panel again. Grab our tongue, maybe move it back a little bit. Okay. Another thing I like to do at this point is keep the tongue selected, grab the inner mouth as well, and label that as a part. So I'm going to go ahead and make that a part. Go back to display under grouping, change part name, I'll just call it inner mouth. So now if I want to hide it for further head editing, I've got two parts in there now. Inner mouth includes the tongue and the inner mouth there. So let's go ahead and unhide the head one more time. And let's take a look at these two polygons right up there. So the last thing I want to do is smooth shift out that little uvula thing in your throat there. If that may not be what that's called. I think that might be what it's called, but a little punching bag thing. And I don't usually do too much, just a few smooth shifts, stretch them out, make it just look kind of like a little hanging punching bag there. Let's see here. Let's grab those. Usually don't spend too much time on this, just a little thingy. You often don't see it except for certain shots. And let's shrink it up a bit here. Okay. There we go. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we have the entire inner mouth set. We're just going to make some sample teeth for the character. So what I'm going to do is go into the next available layer, and again put the head in the background layer. Since this character is kind of a cartoony character, I'm just going to make a white band for his teeth. So let's go ahead and use the box tool. Capital X is the hotkey. And let's give it a couple segments. You can use the arrow keys to add segments. And let's bring it down a little bit here. Okay. And spacebar. Let's go ahead and turn off symmetry and center the box we just made. Let's put symmetry back on so we can start editing it. Top view here, let's just rotate it a bit. And smooth shift these back a little bit. Okay, let's take a closer look here. Let's give him surface. Okay. And let's take a look at the bottom section here. Let's go ahead and bring those in closer so the teeth kind of narrow at the base. Okay. And let's just cut right through the bottom here, just to sharpen up the edge just a little bit. So Shift K for the knife tool. Let's right click and go right through the bottom there. Just sharpen that up a bit. Go to Modify, and let's do a Taper 2, because we want to stretch the teeth out that way and bring them out a little bit that way. So from the front they angle inward on the sides. From the side they kind of angle inward. And I stretch them out a little bit here. Okay. And let's do this. We'll move them up a little bit. And Shift V for the mirror tool. Let's do it on the Y-axis there. Let's say, okay. Now let's go ahead and look at the bottom teeth here. Let's stretch those in a little bit. Make them a little bit smaller. Okay. And let's go ahead and fix that symmetry there. Same old method. Just cut those out. Let's remirror. Set value those to the X-axis. Okay. Now let's go ahead and place them in our mouth. Symmetry back on. We'll stretch them in a little bit to make them fit. And let's cut them out. Paste them in there. Okay, so now we have all the elements that we need and all the landscape that we need on the geometry. We could still tweak further, but we have here basically a completed head. So what I want to do now is, since I've been working in layers, I'm going to go ahead and copy this and then Shift N, new object. And I'll just paste it into the first layer of a new object. And I'll go ahead and save this. It's head 04, which is the latest increment, numeric increment I have here. Okay, let's apply the final touch to the character's head by giving him his hair. So what I'm going to start by doing is going to the next available layer and putting the head in the background again. So what I want to do is start with a box again. Now this character has generally a sort of a flat top going on. And what I want to do, take out the segments there, is sort of mimic that, what's in the 2D art, in this 3D representation. So let's create a box, and let's go ahead and center it so it's symmetrical. Turn symmetry on here. And I'm going to start by working mainly in the profile. I'm going to kind of drag points around here and make the hair in profile here. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these polygons here, and let's go ahead and smooth shift them down. And then deselect that one. Okay. And let's smooth shift one more time. And let's drag some points here. Again, I'm starting off mainly just in the side view here. Okay. And now let's cut right through here. Need one more segment right in here. Okay. And let's go right here where sideburn is. And let's shift that right down. And maybe one more. Okay. Okay. Just going to fix the symmetry here. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is, let's go ahead and bandsaw right through the middle of the right half here. And then I'm going to perform the same operation on the left side. Okay? And then let's go ahead and take a look at just this front portion here. Let's start dragging the points around. Drag tool. Make sure symmetry's on here. And I'm using the head in the background layer as a guide. Tell me roughly whereabouts to place the points here. And right now it's skin hair, so we're going to go ahead and let's unhide the rest of the hair. And let's give it a surface. Hero hair. Now, imagine him having sort of dark hair. I'm going to start with just this gray color. I'm going to edit the surface later. I'm going to start with the gray color so I can see the polygons better. So again, he's looking kind of funny right now, but we're going to edit the points around to make his hair fit properly. Okay, let's go in the back here. Okay, so let's continue to do some more tweaking here. Okay. Let's pull this piece forward a bit. I'm going to grab this front chunk here. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth shift it. And let's rotate it a little bit. Bring it down more to the front of his head here. Stretch it in a bit here too. Now let's bring these more forward. And let's go ahead and bandsaw right through the back there. Oops. Auto. There we go. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I have a general shape here. So I'm going to go ahead and select all the interior polygons of the hair piece here. And make sure I have them all selected here. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and smooth shift them. And in the front view here, I'm just going to stretch them inward a little bit. And then I'm just going to cut them out. So now I have sort of this sort of hollow piece of hair here that I can shape to fit his head a little bit. Okay. Now let's take a look at the front piece again and get that shape there. So let's get a closer look here. And again, I'm just sort of dragging points around, manipulating the shape. And let's take a look right along here. Basically, I'm going to go down the hairline and just make sure that all the geometry is intersecting his scalp there. And let's see here. It's going to have sort of that army crew cut kind of thing, but in an Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of flat top way. Okay, now let's flatten this out a little bit here with the magnet tool. And let's get a little bit more of a point in the front here. Okay. And what I think I want to do is come back to the head object here and maybe pull in the back of the neck a little bit. Might be just a little too much distance between the back of the ear and the back of the neck there. Something you might not notice until you see how the hair looks on it. Pull that in. And again, this is a cartoon character with sort of this comic booky hair. It's going to be mostly black, with probably some bluish highlights, comic book style. So let's go ahead and check this seam around the back of the neck too. Again, it's just a lot of point manipulation, a lot of use of the drag tool. Okay. Alright, so now let's take a look right along here. Let's pull this out a little bit here to get a little bit more of a definitive sort of rim there. Okay. And let's pull these forward. Now, let's go ahead and do just a little bit more point tweaking here. And another thing I'm noticing is that just the top of the head in general might be a little bit too big as per how he looks in the art, judging from the hairline. Let's bring the hair down a bit to where I want it to be, maybe roughly right around there. Then I'm going to take that extra head that's poking out there. Now let's go ahead to the heads layer. See what we can do here. We'll drag those points downward, give him more of a flat head as well. Doesn't matter much because it'll all be under his hair. There we go. Now, let's go ahead and pull this in some more. There we go. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and take this piece of hair that we've got and I'm going to copy it and paste it in the next available layer. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to unsub-patch it here by hitting the Tab key, adjust it a little bit more. And I'm going to give him a little bit of a part in his hair, just to break up the symmetry, make it look a little more interesting. I'm going to just edit some points here. And let's go ahead and turn symmetry off. And we'll put the part on this side. So let's go ahead and hide the other side. And I'm going to take the knife tool and I'm going to cut right down the middle of this side of the head. And you'll see that I've cut straight through this polygon here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that point out, and I'm also going to cut this polygon out. As well as this whole row here. And let's see, let's create this polygon back here. Okay. And let's go ahead and patch some polygons. Let's grab these points here and we'll move them down just a little bit. C, V, copy and paste them. And bring them back up. And let's patch these in. Make sure you select the points in the order in which you want to create the polygon. There we go. Okay, and let's do the same for this row. And let's go ahead and get rid of that one. Let's just weld these here. More dragging. Manipulate the points a little bit here. Okay. And let's, in the side view here, let's drag them up a bit so they meet the opposite side of the part there. Then we might just have to do some editing once we sub-patch here. Again, get rid of those faces, the statistics panel. Let's see how it looks here. And add a little bit more stuff right in here. Let's go ahead and look at this region here. Let's grab these polygons right here, and I'm going to knife cut right through there, right close to the center there. And let's go ahead and manipulate these points a bit. Stick them right into the head there. Now let's just move it up a little bit. Okay, now let's take our part, grab just that section, the part there, and let's just kind of rotate it a little bit in the front view and pull it up a bit. Let's grab these guys here and move them over a little bit. Stretch them in the top view. There we go. Let's take a look here. Okay. So now let's just take one last look at the back here. And we'll just smooth it out a bit. Okay, so now what we want to do is, we've done most of our major editing on the hair. Let's go ahead and edit the color. Bring up the surface panel here. And let's just select our hair. And we'll make it black. He's kind of a comic booky guy, so what the heck, we'll make it blue, but a very deep blue, almost black. There we go. And let's just grab that hair, cut it, and paste it on his head. Let's save this, a new version. Okay, and there you have it. And as you can see, organic modeling takes lots of fine-tuning and point manipulation. And as with anything, practice is the best way to improve. The more you apply the techniques, the faster and easier organic modeling will become. Until next time, I'm Todd Grimes, and thanks for joining me.